Assalamu alaikum. I'm Yaaseen Barnes, and this is the Muslims Connected podcast, a podcast for those seeking enlightenment and enrichment in their life. Today, we are joined by Qaanitah Hunter, I'm just going to say journalist.
That's
or
fine.
writer?
Right.
Let's say writer and journalist. Those are two separate entities for you. You've been the journalist from 18. 17. Just before, yes, I remember listening. How? Like, what makes you a drive to become a professional full-time journalist from the age of 17? Because you didn't study. You went straight into the workforce. What was your drive, and who was your leaders that showed you that way of life?
So, firstly, I must say that it was absolute madness. When I was young, I was a child. I was completely and utterly obsessed with the idea of becoming a journalist. I cannot tell you. I used to read the newspapers every day. I used to cut out articles that I loved. I used to hold a brush in front of the mirror. And I was young. I was 8, 9 years old. I was totally and utterly consumed by politics. We would listen to, at home, the radio station that we'd listen to was the BBC World Service. We had this big radio that we didn't have a television. So that's how we consumed the news. And on the way to, anywhere, we'd listen to SAFM. And I would just be so consumed by this thought of politics and the world. And obviously, when we were very little, it was a post-9/11 world, right?
Yeah.
So there was so much happening in the world. And I remember being like 10 years old and following Jacob Zuma's corruption, like the Shabir Sheikh trial.
Yeah.
Maybe I was a little bit older, but like completely engrossed by it. And I knew that this was just what I wanted to do. And I was just kind of waiting to grow up so I could do it. And that was my life. And the moment I was done writing my last matric paper, I emailed the station manager of Channel Islam and I said to them, can I come work for you? I had no experience. I've never been on radio before. I don't even have a matric certificate because I just finished writing my last paper.
And Channel Islam was in Johannesburg
It was in Johannesburg. I lived in Durban. And then I badgered the man for weeks until he responded and said, come in. Not come in for an interview, not come in, we got a job for you. Just come, visit. I was like, that's my ticket. I packed my bag. I booked a bus ticket.
Not even a train, not a plane.
No, not a plane, a bus ticket. And you know how cheap I am. So my mom gave me 500 Rand to book the ticket. And I was like, why don't I spend 500 Rand on the tickets? I bought a cheap ticket for 200 Rand. Or 200 something Rand. And then I had other 200 Rand. Then I had 500 Rand of my own money in my handbag. So I had a handbag, a bag with all my books, heavy books, and then a suitcase. That's all I went. And then I had this one pair of shoes, Yaaseen. It was like this pink, sparkly pumps. Now, I come from Durban. There's no winter in Durban.
Have you been to Johannesburg before?
Yes.
Okay, so you understand.
I kind of, but I'm going alone, landing in Park Station.
17 or so.
Young. My first taste of Joburg is I get to Joburg, somebody cuts my bag and steals my wallet at Park Station as I land in Joburg.
Welcome.
Then that cold bites you like like you don't understand. But I was so I say like fixated or obsessed with this idea of what I thought my journey was. And I think I had this approach like I had nothing to lose. And so I went to Channel Islam, hustled, took a lift with this auntie, stayed at that auntie's house, and they absolutely had no job for me. What job do you give a 17-year-old who has no experience, not even basic experience, because I just came out of school.
You can't even make tea at 17.
No, really. And I was like, I'll work for free. I'll do anything. Like, what do you want me to do? I'll sit around until you give me a job, but I will do something.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the week, I think the newsreader had resigned, and they were like, well,
right to the front of the line, basically.
Yeah.
Like, so you just started reading
the news, and I used to pronounce every word wrong. I used to say depot as depot.
Is there any footage of this? Because I want to find it for later. So, coming from a home where politics is, I'll say, one of the languages of the house, essentially, because it's on the radio, it's on the paper as well. who were, I'll say, the people that were feeding you those?
I think so. So I attribute a lot to a neighbor that we had at the time who was an ANC activist. She's currently a diplomat, Auntie Nita, and she was very ingrained in the ANC struggle and had met Mandela for long. So I would go and pick her brain as a 6-year-old about politics and about, Robben Island. And the one thing that both my parents encouraged in us is reading. And we never used to go anywhere. We couldn't really afford to go for holidays. So what we really did was go to the library every Friday, get a stack of books, read it through the weekend, and then, so that's what we did. And so I think I traveled, and the one thing about people don't know about me is that I actually suffer from dyslexia. So I struggled to read for a very long time. And the funny thing is, I'm right.
Yeah.
Hilarious. But anyway, so only when I started reading politics did I learn how to read. Because I probably only I learned how to read much later than normal kids. Yeah. Because
I say normal, I say the standard.
Yeah. I think I was only maybe 10, 11 when I properly knew how to read. Yeah. Because it was always a struggle for me. And writing still is a struggle for me. I don't write with a pen, which is funny because I'm a writer, but I type. So that's
you're
good.
A typer. Let's just change the whole title to a typer.
But so having had that experience, being exposed to all sorts of books. I remember being 13 and my friends were reading Harry Potter and I was reading Long Walk to Freedom, because I found something that gripped my mind. And I think it was, I don't want to be pompous about it, but I don't know if it was like an inherent sort of affiliation with fighting injustice that drew me to journalism and drew me to that. And I mean, everyone who knew me as a child knew that I just spoke a lot. I just had an opinion on everything and anything. And so I can't remember a world where I didn't want to be a journalist. Other kids want to be pilots and vets and microbiologists.
It's also one of those, I'll say, many kids find their careers in end of high school, where you realize, I think I'm going to become an engineer, or I think I'm going to become a doctor, or whatever. Yeah. But this was your thing from the get-go.
Yeah.
And you almost hyperfixated on it.
Absolutely.
And you made your world. So when the time came at 17, you were ready.
But what also happened with that hyperfixation was that when I got that first opportunity, it was like getting the next opportunity and then the next opportunity. So when I was a child in Islam, I would read the news. I would literally, my day would start at 5 a.m. I would have to take public transport to the studio. I lived alone at the time, on my own at the time. I was 18 in Joburg. Wow. Take public transport to the studio, start reading the news from early in the morning. And then when I was done with my shift of reading the news, take a taxi to town to cover any news event, even though I didn't know how to. So it would just be like a figure along the way, ask people. And then that's when it was the height of Julius Malema's expulsion from the ANC.
Wow.
And there was this girl in abaya and duki running around Joburg town, focused, so unbelievably intent on being able to tell these stories.
So the other thing of how did you access spaces? Did you have the
Nothing. I had a cheap BlackBerry. And then later, I think
BlackBerry also gives us a time frame of when this happened. You were running on.
I had a BlackBerry, and then I had a recorder, and I had a plastic press card that I made myself, and then I would
just move
around.
Did you find that being a woman and then also a woman in hijab, was that ever a block? Or
initially it was, but I just never paid attention to it. I just wouldn't. If you wouldn't speak to me, I just wouldn't acknowledge the fact that you're not speaking to me. It was just not an option. And I think that was the blessing of my career and my life, alhamdulillah, for the last many years, is that I never ever led with the fact, if you are uncomfortable with my hijab, that's your problem. It was never a conversation. I'm never going to apologize for it. I'm never going to mention it. I'm never going to write.
Yeah.
I'm not going to identify. How I seek to show up in the world as a visibly Muslim woman is my prerogative.
Yeah.
And so the idea was that I never ever led with it. It was never you'll get that's how I used to. So eventually I got a job at a newspaper, and then my commute to work used to be longer, right? So I had to take about sometimes 2, but most of the time 3 taxis to get to work, right?
Wow.
So in the one taxi rank in Midrand, so it was like I'd get to Midrand, and from Midrand I would have to take another taxi to where the office newsroom was, and I became known as Zege. Because so they were like everybody. Then politicians started calling me Zege. Everybody started calling me.
But also, it's also I'll say a term of endearment to an extent.
No, 100%. I didn't take offense to it at all.
Yeah.
It probably started with one taxi driver poking fun at me, right?
Yeah.
And then it became a term of endearment. And that's South Africa for you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
When we say fatty, it's not.
Yeah.
It's endearment. Yeah.
Even our politicians' cupcake.
Our whole president.
Our official, the president of our country. When we say cupcake, everybody knows
who you talk.
Cupcake is, and you go. Even he responds to if you saw him in the road and he shouted cupcake.
You'll respond,
Yeah.
100%.
And also,
I went to a event and say, comrade, let's welcome comrade cupcake. Everybody laughed. Everybody knew what they're talking about.
and he also didn't go, please don't call me that,
Yeah,
it's offensive. And then also, and maybe as someone who is not in hijab, I feel like as a country, we are very tolerable of people and I'll say the way they dress and stuff. Do you?
Yeah, 100%.
Do you feel that also?
100%. And my experience is very, very different to some of my colleagues that I've met internationally. Because, I say this to colleagues. I don't realize, I think I did not realize my privilege when I had these conversations to say, I don't understand why you make your career about being the woman in hijab in news. You are the woman in news who happens to wear hijab, or you are the ex-person who happens. And then I realized that not everyone has the luxury of just being accepted into spaces, and that not being an impediment to your growth. But I'll tell you this. I had so many things working against me, right? Firstly, I was a woman in the space, which was difficult at the time.
Yeah.
I was a child. In fact, that my age was probably the biggest barrier, because people were like, the kid.
Yeah.
Well, why do we need to talk to this kid?
And you can see you. So just to cut you there, when I think we friends are from social media for the last 10 years now.
Yeah.
When I met you, when I saw who you were, I didn't realize. I thought you were much older.
Because a granny.
Only because you had such I'll say a title in the industry already, that I was like, to be at this level that you are, you must have been around, because the natural progression is it's study, then go do the ground labor, and then finally get your way into a works. So when I was like, it's Qaanitah Hunter, then when I heard how old you are, I was like, how? What?
The child.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was a big thing, because initially, so I went to the ANC's Mangaung conference, right? That was 2012. So 2012, I was 18 or whatever. And there I am interviewing politicians. And I remember Stuart Lamini, he was the president of Kusatu at the time. He says in Zulu to me, and I understand that it was I come from KZN, and he says, what does this child want from me? And I responded to him, I said, I just want to talk to you. And he spoke to me because it was funny, because I heard, because I didn't take offense to it. I was like, I could take offense, or I
also
could
you knew what the skinner was. You're like, yeah.
And then, so the age thing, and then, and then also being a woman of color that comes, and then you still have hijab on top of it, right? So then I just realized, I think I had this stubborn thing of, none of this is going to matter for me. It matter for you.
But that's your problem.
That's your problem. And I think when you meet people with that energy, and I think it's also naivety of being young, right?
Yeah.
I think now maybe I probably don't have that same confidence that I had then. But that naivety of
yeah. And now what?
You can not like me, but you can still talk to me.
Yeah. But also the thing of, I'd say with the youth, of just going, I'm just learning.
What is the worst thing that happens?
Yeah.
Somebody says, no, I don't want to talk to you. And then what?
I'm going to find another way to talk to you.
Okay.
So you are now, where do you go from Channel Islam?
I go to the New Age. When I got to the New Age...
when you were at Channel Islam, were you writing as well?
I was writing for them. I was writing for the website. I was trying to learn. So I would go to work at 5. Then I would. There was a colleague at the time, Azhar Wadi, that used to sit and teach me journalism. Then I used to read the news. I used to produce a show, and then I used to report in the afternoons. At the time, then I started my first year through UNISA. So I only had done my first year, and then I was obsessed about writing for print. So any newspaper advert for lecture, I would email every editor. The editors that I meet now, who are my peers, were like, remember I used, Ferial Haverty, I probably sent her 20 emails. Please, I'll work for free. I'll do anything. I'll make your coffee. I'll do anything. She's like, sorry, it doesn't really work like that. She says she still has one of those emails. But the point is that, and then I got into the New Age at the time. This was before we knew what New Age was about. But what was the coolest thing for me was that it gave me access to Jacob Zuma. Because of
they had
the Guptas' own New Age. And Jacob Zuma took to me, and Jacob Zuma took to talking to me. And then I used to just get scoop after scoop after scoop. That's why I say in my bio.
So you and Zuma were working for the Guptas at the same time, is that?
Listen, you heard it here first.
Employed at the same time. We know where our money is.
And then, but that opportunity just opened. I mean, I was young. It was horrific, the working conditions. I'd work 7 days a week. Then at some point I was doing television for them and print. I was traveling all over the country. The access I had, because Zuma would speak to me, then his ministers would speak to me. And because the ministers would speak to me, his officials would speak to me.
At the time, did you know? Because you seeing behind the veil of Zuma now. Because you get to see the person also. You're not seeing him as a president.
This was early state capture days. We didn't know what was going on. Remember, this was pre-Waterkloof. This was 2013. This was before the wedding.
Oh, okay.
And then all of that came out.
So then how much of the... So are you seeing Gupta things at the time? Because I feel like you also...
No, I'm having lunch with them.
That's so wild.
Which is weird because as a junior employee, I was like a kid.
Yeah.
To have reached that level where I was like comfortable. They saw me as the future of I think, because of the opportunities I got. But I don't think I waited for opportunities. I think because I barged my way into every room.
Yeah.
You know that awkward moment when the child just pushes and then you well, the child is here now. So I think that's
keep talking everybody.
I think that was the experience. And then when I left and when I got to the Mail and Guardian in 2014, I started investigating the Guptas.
What made you leave?
I think that political environment when it became known what it was about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I left without a plan. I left, and then the Mail and Guardian called me up, and I started working again. I still didn't have my degree at the time. I was 20, so I worked for them for 2 years. Guptas.
So is that the common thing for you to go? I know what I want, but I don't have the plan.
Yeah, I think it's the stupidity of my life. just kind of. I think I have this extreme sense of what is the worst that can happen.
Mm.
So, ask the president for an interview. What's the worst that will happen?
Mm.
Do the interview. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, it's the belief in yourself, and then also just going.
I don't think it's believing in yourself because I don't fundamentally have white boy confidence of I'm this great person.
It will work for me.
Yeah, I think it's just a sense of
it will figure itself out.
Yeah.
Is it a Waku life?
I think so.
It's all
Let's put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah. The Waku life is for me.
Seriously though, we laugh, but I think so much of my life has literally been that. It's just been if I don't really have the answer, but I can try.
Mm.
And if it doesn't work out, and lots of things haven't worked out in my life.
Yeah.
I can start listing them.
But so here's the other thing, you come across as someone who things might not work out, but you don't lose because you learn.
I think so. I think that has been, like I said, lots of things have not worked out in my life. But the lessons you learn along the way, and I think you've
not worked out as you planned.
Absolutely.
That's in the brackets there.
And I think, Yaaseen, the important lesson for me was we don't really know what tomorrow brings. And so just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Again, doesn't always work out in life.
Yeah.
But alhamdulillah, it has worked out in my career. But sometimes when I look back, my late mother used to say to me, she said she was very worried about me. So I said, why? She says, if you don't take no for an answer. So I said, how is that a bad thing? She says, what if one day you propose to a man and he says no, and then you just... And I was like, no, I won't do that.
But also, she knew that you would propose to the man. She was like, I know my daughter. She'll make the effort.
I have not. I have never done that in my life.
So then, before, let's go one step back, because politics is happening, the writing is happening, the journalism is happening, but the diaries also, the writing, I'll say the
Guji Girl.
Yes.
So, you know what happened?
Where does that start? Okay, for those who don't know, what is that and where does it start?
Okay, so Diary for Guji Girl was a novel that I wrote in 2013, 2014. But before that, it was a blog. So
when blogs were a staple.
Yeah, and there wasn't many Muslim girls writing blogs. And fiction blogs was not a thing, right? So my commute to work was very long because I used to take public transport. So I cobbled up money and bought me, do you know those like the baby iPads? Do you remember those? It's an iPad, but it's a small one, right? Yes. So when I used to, the thing about taxis, I don't know if you use taxi, you wait for that taxi to fill up. Now this is like 6 o'clock in the morning. So I used to sit on that, and then I was like, I want an iPad because I can read the news while I'm doing big things. I saved up and I bought it. Then I used to sit on that taxi, and then I used to start typing this story just to occupy myself.
Yeah.
Then I sent it to a few of my friends, and they were like, it was posted on a blog. So old school WordPress blog. I posted on the blog. Next thing I know, 20,000 hits a day. At that time, it's lot of people.
Massive.
Massive.
Also in a time, firstly, to get people to read.
It was badly written. It was badly written. But people loved it. And you know why people loved it? And I think for me, there was a very great example of the times that we are in. Is that people wanted to read and see themselves in media. And we don't. We didn't have that at the time. And so it was an ordinary story of an ordinary girl who came from a farm town to Joburg to study and messed around a little bit and tried to find herself, and it went viral. To the point that today, after all of the hard work, political books that I've written, people still ask me, when is the next Guji Girl coming?
I was about to ask now again.
No.
Because it's such a, again, representation. It is also very relevant for its time in terms of what influences were at the time. And then also how the normal person or the normal person saw influences. And their life was so away from ours that your story was how we could become that. Because influence is always... they tell us that, you can live the life I live. I'd have a Mercedes.
So I think people, that idea of people finding themselves and in the stories. And I think the success of Guji Girl, even as the book, I underplayed this time because, again, hyper-fixated and focused on wanting to become a serious journalist, wanted people to take me seriously. And so I kind of put that on the wayside because I was focusing on understanding politics in building sources, in writing, in getting the next gig, and then publishing my first political book because that was my dream, right? And I had one dream in my life. I was like, I want to write for the Sunday Times and I want to write a book. And then at 22, that's what I did. And then I was like, okay, now what do I do?
What's the next dreams? So at 22, you accomplished your dreams.
No, not yet.
I mean, those dreams.
Early 20s, yeah.
And then when did you go study?
I was studying.
Wait, back to the book of Guji. So how do you get that? Does someone come to you?
Yeah,
do you take it forward?
So someone comes to me and says, we need to put this in a book. And I was like, who's going to read it? Also, again, badly written. I the publisher Shafina's convinced me. She says it will be great, etc., etc. I get an opportunity to go to Iran with the foreign minister at the time. I have a deadline to submit this Guji Girl book. There I am sitting in Tehran, busy trying to, because I didn't do it in time, because I obviously took the opportunity more, and that is and that has never changed for me, because the last book that I wrote, Who Will Rule South Africa, I didn't meet the deadline. I didn't finish in my self-imposed deadline. So I'm sitting in the US on a fellowship trying to finish and write about Paul Mashatile.
I feel like you're like the Hannah Montana of writing, where you were writing like bubblegum pop and then also world-changing news at the same time. You're the best of both worlds over there.
Listen, we try. But I mean, it's a creative and telling. So what is the central theme? The central theme is telling stories, and I think that for me has been life-changing, and I've done it in so many ways. I did it on radio. I did it in print. I've done it for digital. I've done podcasts. I just feel like the medium doesn't matter. That essentially what we connect with is stories. So back in the day, we all, like, my mother used to tell me stories about how they used to on a Saturday, like, congregate around a radio to listen to the radio program on a Saturday, And then whether it's watching the evening news or watching 7 till I don't know what people watch. And then it eventually morphed into social media, etc. So for me, I think the thing that drives me is storytelling.
We're also the first generation that gets to that gets to tell our stories for the next generation. Because previously, because of, I'll say, apartheid and just the system, our stories were held to an extent, at least. Like it was verbal storytelling.
Absolutely.
So now I feel like you are abusing in the right way.
Yeah.
Every medium possible to tell the story, you will be there to do that.
And so, I mean, when it comes to fiction, it was really about like my kind of the world, like, and I love, and that's a junk. The fiction that I write is not serious; it's bubblegum, and then I write the serious thing. But it was a creative outlet for me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like I didn't do it justice in terms of like giving it time and attention and feeding that interest, because I was so focused on this. So I think now, 10 years later, I'm able to say, I'd like to revisit that and give it the attention and give it the time and see where it goes.
With the skill set that you, I'll say, built up over all these years.
Hopefully that I can spell now.
Well, on the dyslexic, as someone with ADHD, also, I probably read 2 books in my life to completion, but I found that it's easy to do when it's something you're passionate about. So that's why what book did I read? It's a Trevor Noah book, and I can't get his name now. His friend, also the writer, works anyway. I forgot his name now.
A local Kayat Langa.
Kayat Langa's book. Those are the only 2 books I've read
in your life.
In my life. Yes.
Usually my book is you.
Again, but I'm going to get to the point now. It's that thing of when you find something that you connect with, you can read. It's almost like everything that has stopped you, or that you've put your blinkers on, it doesn't exist because that's something that you're into.
But that's with books, but that also does with so many other things. And I say this to so many people. I say that the issue is you have to find, and what I worry about younger generation, I sound like an old person now, is that there's not a lot of effort cultivating what actually interests you. So you have a lot of sort of these carbon copy kids that don't have like unique personalities. And I'm like, find anything that you're passionate about. You want to make doll houses out of ice cream sticks, do it.
Yeah.
Just find the thing that makes you and has your spark. And whatever it is, you'll be good at it.
Yes.
Whatever it is.
Because that's your
thing. And I think that a lot of people are kind of trying to fit in a mold, which I mean, whatever you're, but at the same time, find a thing that lights your fire. And I think that we don't spend enough time helping people navigate what that is, and creating an environment where it was fine. And I think for me, what I have to be grateful for is that I had an environment. I don't know if and my sisters and I often talk about it, whether I just again, didn't take no for an answer, but I had a very enabling environment only in the sense that I may have not had like support and the money and the network. Maybe I had a bit of networks, but what I did was I had people around me who didn't tell me no.
That's very important.
And my sister said to me, because they were so stubborn, if they even said no, I'd never listen to them. So they just didn't bother. But I think just that ability to, if a child says, my sister and I used to publish a magazine when we were kids. It's called Kid Zone.
Nice.
And I couldn't write. So I used to find like the ideas of like the word, like the crosswords and whatever. Then my mother used to write it for us, and then we used to photocopy it for 20 cents a page at the library, and then we used to sell it for 3 rand.
The writer, journalist, publisher, editor of multiple magazines.
One called Kid Zone. But what I'm saying is that like there was that enabling environment of just do it, and then 10 people can read it or no one can read it, but you did it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that Alhamdulillah has been a really, really great gift to my life.
And the thing of you can only get better once you do it. Because many people, and I say this for myself as well, we speak of plans and you go, I want to do this, but I must first get this right. And the first get this right is years. And you end up never doing the second and third episode because you don't get to the first episode. So you've moved on to, to The Guardian.
Mail and Guardian.
Mail and Guardian.
And that's when it was like, that's my dream job, working. Now I'm doing investigations. Now I'm writing serious politics. Yes. I'm writing front page newspapers.
It's also a big establishment.
Massive at the time.
Yeah.
And also I learned a lot because the people that hired me were people who invested a lot in me.
Nice.
So the opportunity. So whereas I had access to like politicians and stuff when I was at the New Age, here I had guidance and mentorship and people who invested in my career. And you know how I got the Mail and Guardian gig is that I was sitting next to the then deputy editor at an event where Jacob Zuma was supposed to attend. And you know Jacob Zuma has to be late to everything. So he was like 8 hours late. And I had NikNaks in my bag.
8 hours is not late, by the way. 8 hours is the other event.
And I always used to carry NikNaks as to buy the taxi rank. So I had my NikNaks in my bag. So I offered him the NikNaks. Didn't want the NikNaks. Eventually, he was so like starving and desperate, he just took the NikNaks. Then I started talking to him. And then I was like, I think you must hire me. And then he just laughed it off. And then, I don't know, it was maybe weeks or months. I can't remember exactly.
But again, just shooting the shot of going, hire me. It's fine.
Yes, a NikNaks, but also hire me.
So did you learn that form of corruption from
the Guptas?
You just, I'll buy my way in. You can have NikNaks. I get the job. You can do the thing.
We win.
So just by simple... So when journalists, I'll say, facing... Because you sit as a group asking the question to the president or whoever's in front. Do you guys get along?
So yes and no. I think that for a long time I was an outsider, but I think when you're not bothered by being the outsider, then people are just forced to accept you.
Yeah.
And so then you have the more pompous ones. But I've had that's why I say I have an anomaly because I didn't have those problems. Alhamdulillah, and I'm very grateful for it. Where it was just you're here, and you're one of us, and you know.
And they took you as that also, and you just.
And again, at the age thing, I had the visibly Muslim thing, but it was. I think that's what I love so much about South Africa is that you can be crazy yourself and people just keep it moving.
Yeah.
So
crazy is so normal.
So normal, yeah. So it's not an anomaly. And I say it for so many different people and experiences. And I know it's not a shared experience to everyone. Some people have had really difficult journeys. But I said for me, and I don't know if it's the fact that I just never bothered to care about someone's opinion about how I show up in the world, or was that I was genuinely accepted and okay. And obviously, I've encountered rude comments and bullying, as anybody would have in their lives, But yeah, and I think, again, when you're so hyper focused on this one thing of getting the scoop, because you see the scoop is and this one many people don't realize about journalists, right? Especially in the field of journalism that I work in, which is political journalism, is that it's like a high, right? You're chasing this adrenaline that like, okay, we need to speak to people, we need to speak, get the scoop. Once you get the scoop, you like, and then the crash happens because you need the next scoop. So it's like a constant search. And the amazing thing about that time of my life was that I've traveled the entire country, front and back, dozens of times. I've slept at truck stops in Messina. I've been at 5-star hotels
across the world.
And then I started traveling internationally for my work, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. And again, a lot of it was hustle. A lot of it was, hey, there's a conference happening. Can you sponsor my, I can't afford to, and just like forcing my way in. And so alhamdulillah, on the other side of it, I realized that the opportunities I have, I think I traveled to almost 30 countries, some many more than others. And a lot of it was just hustle. A lot of it was not self-funded. A lot of it was just, hey, I hear the president is going. Can I please come? AQ, who do you think you are? Okay, fine. Here's a lift.
Yeah. And Q's also been the name that they know you by.
Yeah. People know me by Q. And it was, and that's how I started traveling with Ramaphosa. And because I was writing a book on him, your wife, Naima, and I conceptualized a book. And at the time, I was working at the Sunday Times, and I was like, no, we'll get access to him. I don't know how, but we'll get access to him. And we wrote a book. I mean, it was revolutionary to write a book about a president at the onset of their career. Never happens, right?
Yeah. Especially after him coming after the fire and all those things. Everything. So how do you get access, or how do you ask the president, can I write the book about you? Or do you tell him that you're writing it? You just...
You don't, but you make friends with the people around him. You make friends with the people around him, and you make enemies with the people around him because they don't like you very much. But I think that by that time, I didn't have to sort of prove myself. And so there was a lot of assistance. And I think I was lucky in that regard, is that people, I don't know if it's like my parents' duas or what it is, but I've always felt in whatever endeavor that I sought to do in life, I found people willing to help me. And so writing the Ramaphosa book, I had like really great access of politicians who would give me like 5 to 8 hours of their time in a day.
Which is a lot.
And sit and recount, like, because essentially, I mean, I'm young. I don't have the lived experience of like, the early 90s when the transition was happening. What was Cyril Ramaphosa's role? So I would just sit with these people and not like formal interviews, just sitting and recounting. Then I had like interviews with former President Beki, former President Kgalema Motlanthe, and both used all of that encounters to tell the story about how Cyril Ramaphosa became the president and what it would mean. And that was like an incredible experience for me. And then that just sort of set the ball rolling for the next book and the next book.
Was that your first
political book?
First political.
Yeah.
And then how was that received again? Because it's not just an article now.
Yeah.
It's a
book. It's a real thing.
It's going to last forever. It's going to go to the library.
So before it got published, people were like, what? Like, how do you have the authority to write on it? Yeah. And then people assumed that it was going to be like a compilation of news articles until they read the book. And then they realized, like, politicians would call me and say, how did you know that? Because of the like access that I had, people who volunteered like really good information. And so it was really an amazing experience. It opened my world to so much. And the thing about writing a book is that it takes immense discipline. And I think we did it in 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, we did it in 6
And that's
months.
Besides actually doing your job.
Yeah.
Besides living the life.
The job that had to happen. And I think so that book came out in 2019. So we started in 2018. So maybe a year from the time we conceptualized it till the time we wrote it. But till the time we published it. But the actual period was a 6-month period. The second book was was the July Unrest book. That we wrote in a month. It was mad. And again, that book was just meant to be kind of like, just tell South Africans what happened, like a chronology of what happened. And I was like, I'm not happy. And we managed to get a trove of leaked intelligence documents that became the underpinning to the fact that 8 Days in July was a book that was referenced in the official inquiry of what happened during the riots.
Wow.
That was a cool moment.
But also, so you as a journalist, you get sources and leaked and someone tells you things. How do you verify?
So that's the skill, right?
Yeah.
You ask the doctor, how do you cut into someone's heart?
Yeah.
It's the skill you learn over time. So you have to, I mean, it's not one size fits all. It's a serious element of verification, double sourcing, speaking, and that's the skill as a journalist. You have to get a wide array of people. You have to get people. You have to talk to good policemen and bad policemen. You have to talk to good politicians and bad politicians. And that's what enriches your work. It was, but I'll never recommend that. Writing a book, it was insane, but I mean, very rewarding. Similarly, the last book that we wrote, Who Will Rule South Africa. And for me, what the books gave me a great opportunity to do was to kind of sit, so we run so fast as journalists. So the idea was to sit back and say, all right, what is the story that I'm trying to tell, and use those enriching moments. There's so many things that happen behind the scenes that doesn't come out in our news.
Yeah.
Like your interactions with the personalities, your observations about certain things. And I hate to sound like Praveen Gordon, but connecting the dots is so important.
So does the book allow you to paint the picture that you experience with, I'll say, with the president and with your own experience of
it's the information with your kind of analysis coupled with your lived experience, and it's because you write it first person as well, so you're able to. And I think for me, I read a lot of political books. The ones that stand out for me are the more accessible ones, not the ones that sound too smart. What am I getting from these 4,000 word thick that nobody reads those besides a bunch of academics? It's the idea of how So how do you make it accessible? But also the other challenge that I had, like with book writing, not even as much as I had in journalism, and that space is very snobbish. Where people are like you're Johnny come lately, you're writing books. What gives you the audacity? And I said, I give myself the audacity.
But that's, again, it feels like that's been the running theme of your life.
The audacity.
I've given myself the audacity. So let's go back again. New Mail and Guardian.
Yeah.
And you're a journalist there.
Yeah.
Political journalist.
I was not a political. I was too young to be a political journalist. And at the time, in these prestigious news organizations, you had to be a journalist for 20 years before you could specialize. And then I would like moonlight. So I'll do your running at this basic, and then I'll write politics on the side. Then I'll do this, and then eventually they just gave up and said, write politics.
Take it.
Yeah.
Because I also, again, it was very interesting if I hear your age, it makes me feel very old, firstly. But also the thing of a lot of our institutions hold older people in positions for, I'll say, too long.
Yeah.
So that's why you were a great, like a young person's take or young person's view of the news and of the politics. So you always, it felt like news I actually care about. Like, because I always feel like when you hear news, and sometimes I go, these are not things that necessarily affect my world. While it does affect the world, I spend day to day.
And that's where I am now in my current endeavor, is to say, how do you remove news from being this old people thing to make it, because if anything, it affects young people more. What happens in the world affects young people more than it affects old people.
We're going to be a long way to
deal with the consequences.
So then you be going to politics, right? And
political reporting. I'm not a politician.
Would you ever?
No, never.
Because I'd say you see the worst of people. You also see the best of people.
That's actually the hardest thing of this job, is that you really see the underbelly of how terrible humans can be, and you also see how really great humans can be, and it's such a difficult thing to reconcile.
And then also to step away from. Because again, you have to chase the next high.
Yeah.
So you need to go back tomorrow and do the same.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I feel like there's just like a lot of emotions that must happen. Did you have time to rest? Because in a country where every day there's 7 pieces of like scandal.
Yeah. It was difficult, and I think it did. I mean, I can't talk about the highs without talking about the lows.
Yeah.
Definitely huge amounts of loans during that time. I say to some of my colleagues, I said, when I was probably going through the best moments of my career, winning awards, writing books, I was also, at a personal low. I lost both my parents in a space of 3 years. I, went through life-changing personal moments. And that was the difficulty of balancing, the personal and then what was happening in my work, which was soaring at the time, and you learn that lesson now. I think when I look back, I say, would I have given so much to it? It like alhamdulillah, it paid off for me. But at some point, there's also a personal toll that comes with it. But I think the greatest gift of my journey has been the ability to learn as I was going along. So you meet people and you learn from people firsthand. You learn from your heroes, essentially. Yeah. And that for me has always been incredible.
You now have you realized that you've become hero?
That's a hard one. I still feel like that child getting off the bus and trying to hustle my way into Joburg town, like
making a thing happen.
Yeah.
Because now you also represent, but also you stand forward for people who haven't had, I'll say, representation.
Yeah.
What advice do you now, with the whole lived experience of the highs and the lows? What advice would you give to the youth? I'll say to the youth.
I think for me is finding your purpose. I think finding your purpose, whatever that purpose is. No one must tell you what your purpose is, people. Once you find your purpose, and your purpose is not a job. For me, I had to come to realize that journalism is the vehicle in which I live my purpose. It's not entirely my purpose. My purpose is connecting people and telling people stories. That is my making the world a better place by telling people stories and making sense of the world for people. That's my purpose. And I think that once you figure out what your purpose is, everything else fits into that.
Yeah.
I think the second thing is take the time to figure out who you are. Take that time. Having a strong sense of self, even in Islam, the ability to have to know who you are. There's an Arabic saying that says, if you know yourself, you know the truth. And so for me, I think we rush through life not taking the time to say, this is who I am, this is the parameters that I have, this is how I show up in the world, this is why I show up like this in the world. And I think that takes a little bit of intentional doing to say, I'm actually finding who I am.
Yeah, so you become a better person for the people around you.
Absolutely.
Once you know what you can give, because then you end up not giving too much. You give you give enough of what you have.
Absolutely, and you're not steered by people around you. You're good and bad. The reality of it is we are a product of our environment, but at the same time we can supersede a lot and we can overcome a lot if we know what it is who we are and where we would like to go. Essentially, we can't really force our way to exactly where we want to go. We don't know if that's good or bad, but having that sense of this is where I would like to go is very promising.
Setting goals, but also knowing that goals can happen tomorrow. Everything can come true.
Absolutely.
You were the youngest editor for News 24.
Yeah, I was 26 when I became a political editor.
Political editor. 26. Again, I didn't feel so old, but also at 26, I didn't know what I wanted. Like I did a course at UNISA, just trying to have like some purpose in the world. Here you telling the country what politics looks like.
No, but it was an incredible experience, and again, I'm super grateful for the opportunities that I've had. People took gambles on me. Imagine hiring a 18-year-old and then hiring a 22-year-old and hiring a 26-year-old. That's a huge gamble. I don't know if I would do it now. But I'm grateful that people took a bet on me, and it worked out. And I think that. So it gave me a huge opportunity. It was huge responsibility as well to lead a team that a lot of them were my seniors.
How was that though? As I'll say, to be the leader.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing, and I don't think I've fully grappled with the responsibilities that come with being a leader. You learn a lot about yourself in that moment, and you realize that maybe what you thought about yourself is probably not who you are, because now you're faced with dealing with humans in a very different way. And I would like to think that it was a great experience of growth, huge amount of responsibility, and at the same time, I think opened my eyes to so much of opportunity. I think that as humans, how we relate to humans is such an important thing. That's what management was for me. That was what leadership was for me. It's just, how do you show up for the people who take direction from you, essentially? And it was a phenomenal experience.
Especially for people, especially if they're older than you, they've been doing it for a certain way.
Long living. There are people who I managed who were journalists, who became journalists the year I was born.
That's wild. Also because they've lived a life before. Before you were born, they lived a life and then became journalists. So then, did you have to ever, like, how do you show change to someone that's been in the system?
I think you have to walk the talk. I think that I had to learn. You cannot stand on a member and preach down to people. You have to run, and people must run with you. And I think that has been a very important lesson that I had to learn very quickly. That you can't wag your finger at anyone, young or old. You're not going to affect any change. So it's about effecting change incrementally by showing people the positive of the change you're hoping to direct. And that, I think, for me was the fun part of it, of still being in the field. I had the opportunity to mentor young people, but also learn from older people.
Yeah.
And I think humility is something that you are forced to have as a leader. Whether you can be the most arrogant person, but at the end of the day, if you want to get results, you just have to humble yourself and essentially hear more than speak.
Yes. Sorry, I was just listening to the words now. Like that makes sense. Because you also have to understand someone and know they need to know that you understand them. So when you speak to them, it's never you just judging them for doing something wrong, but figuring out. Also, as a leader, you have to show people how to get better, because you can't just cut people if they're not doing.
You have to walk the and your success is your team's success. And so as a result, I can't just sit at complain, oh, this person is terrible, this person is terrible. I have to make them better.
Yeah.
And alhamdulillah, I've had really great experience with a good team of people who again, I think when you leave a bit of your ego at the door, then we all just learning from each other. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we'll make mistakes, and we won't. And I think the thread of my life is learning. And wanting to learn. Also, the positions that you've taken on in the political journalist state, and then also as a leader and the editor, there's a lot of scrutiny that happens there from
people of the industry and also just the outside world.
I get trolled on Twitter. I get
I've
trolled.
seen them. That's how do you shake it off? Do you shake it off? Like
It takes it all.
because sometimes someone will say something that's not even worth listening to, but those things
Sting.
and they sting for days.
People comment on your teeth. People comment on your weight. People comment on your. People will find anything. And I mean, at the same time, I obviously experienced cyberbullying because of the work that we were doing, exposing state capture, and it really was insane to experience how angry people are and how bitter people are. But at the same time, there's a lot of it is bought, so you have to get a thick skin. But again, there's many moments in my career where that thick skin didn't stand, and I just sort of crumbled into a ball, and then had to realize, okay, pick yourself up again.
What's the pickup? What's your motivation?
Purpose. We're not here to do small things. It's bigger than how I feel today.
Yeah.
It's bigger than, okay, somebody said I look ugly. Okay, then
I'm going to cut this clip and I'm going to play it every morning for myself to go get up and get to work and do the job that you need to do.
We put it on a t-shirt. We are not here to do small things.
The Tawakkul way of life.
Tawakkul way of life.
Then, so now you've moved on from News 24, which is also it's a choice that you've made.
Yeah.
That you've gone, you've done your time, you're carrying on.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. How do you, firstly, what's the next step? But also, have you found rest yet?
I haven't, and that's probably, we'll have a podcast in some time where I talk about how, I needed to rest and I didn't.
Don't make a podcast. Just speak to people. Not everything needs to just
listen. We're in the podcast era, Yaaseen.
Yes.
So I am. I'm in a phase of my life now where I want to use the experience that I have in a formal media establishment to figure out the future. I don't think people know what the future of media is. So from a media sustainability perspective, from a financial element, but also just like editorially, traditional media is dying, but the new is not ready to be born. So what role can I play to figure out what the future of journalism is? Storytelling is never going to die. Whether it was going to be around a fireplace, whether it is going to be at the corner shop, whether it's going to be on radio, on television, storytelling and us sharing our stories and our perspectives in life, it's a human instinct.
Yeah.
And so the idea now for me is to say, how can I leverage the depth that I've learned through my career and go to the proverbial marketplace, which is social media? And I started doing work with South Africa, where we aimed at just doing one thing: is tell the South African story in the most South African way possible, and do it in a place where South Africans are on, which is social media. And for me, that is my purpose at the moment. It's not different to anything. The temperature is different because I'm not sticking, kind of exposing that Jacob Zuma got money from dodgy people. But it is making sense of the world to people. And I think we live in such a noisy world. There's just so much. So the idea is, okay, the president signed the NHI bill. I would have written that story. He signed it into law. You just want to know, give me the highlights. What does it mean for me?
What does it mean?
Yeah, what does it mean for you? Listen, you're not going to be able to go to private hospitals as you know it. Medical aid, you're going to have to fund. We all will go now. So the state is now basically responsible for health care, and this is the consequence. Done. That's all you want to know.
Yeah. I don't need to know all the intricates of the slow part.
The intricate is important because that gives us the why.
Yeah.
But the idea is, how do you translate the official, the serious to people when in a world where you're competing with TikTok videos and misinformation and disinformation?
Yeah. It's a big task that you're taking on.
I hope it I mean, it's an endeavor that I think will be worthwhile, because the main thing that what Scene wants to do, Scene South Africa particularly, is how do you create empathy? You create empathy by sharing stories of each other, right? So how many people have you experienced that have like preconceived notions of people living in Cape Town? I'm just giving an example.
Yeah.
Simple, stupid thing. Why? Because they don't know people living. They just have this idea of it. So much of hate in the world, so much of enmity, so much of conflict in the world comes from the thing that we just don't see other people as humans. And the best way to see people as humans is to hear their stories.
Yeah.
So whether that's somebody who's paraplegic, whether that's somebody who's an ex-convict, whether that's somebody who is, trying to change the world. At the end of the day, we just have to hear each other out.
It's a beautiful, I'll say a beautiful statement, but also a beautiful place to wrap this up now. Thank you so much for your time. We know that you are busy. We literally fetch you from the airport. We're taking you to the next place. Things are just happening. We do hope to see more of you, and also we wish you all of the best for this, I'll say, the new phase of your life now.
Shukran, Barakallah Fik. And this is an incredible opportunity for me to be here, because I think as Muslim professionals, we have a lot to share and a lot to learn from each other.
Yeah.
And I think that what you guys are doing is phenomenal.
Shukran. I think also, I feel like you're about to change the world. So that's what. So? I genuinely feel like
I could just fall down and collapse. And
that doesn't happen to you. We've heard the story. Fall down and collapse is not the person you are. You're just going to push through.
I could be a lady who brunches. Just go to brunch at 11 o'clock on Tuesday.
And then at 12 o'clock, we report on how the president is also scandalous. I feel like you're always just going to be open. Thank you for your time. We genuinely appreciate you. Assalamu alaikum, guys. That has been Qaanitah Hunter. That is Qaanitah Hunter. I'm Yaaseen Barnes, and this is the Muslim Connected podcast. Shukran. Salam.